Voting is an opportunity for voices to be heard. It's one of our most important freedoms. Voting isn't just a right, it's a privilege, and the power to speak up and choose people that represent your values and beliefs. KCAT TV is proud to present Coffee and Candidates, one-on-one interviews to introduce candidates running for council in Los Gatos and Monte Sereno. Let's welcome our host, Dr. Larry Gerston.
Hi, I'm Larry Gerston. Let's have coffee with the candidates. Come on in. Welcome to Coffee and Candidates, brought to you by the Los Gatos Community Foundation, the Tour Factory, and the Los Gatos Coffee Roasting Company. Also, let's not forget, we're here in the KCAT studios, and of course we couldn't have done it without our sponsors or KCAT, so we thank them all. Without further ado, we're going to turn to Daniel Labouve, who is running for, I guess we would say, re-election, right? You were appointed in 2019, and now you're seeking a full 4-year term. Is that correct?
I am seeking a full 4-year term. Thank you. So just for the record, my name is Daniel Labouve, and I am running for Monte Sereno City Council. I was appointed to the Monte Sereno City Council on May 7th, 2019, and have served for 16 months so far. I have been a resident of Monte Sereno for 22 years, am married, and have raised 2 children through the local schools. I'm currently retired and was previously an executive in the semiconductor industry. I have a BS in electrical and computer engineering from University of California, Santa Barbara. As a council member, I've proactively focused on 3 core objectives. Number 1 is preserve and enhance Monte Sereno's unique residential character. Number 2, implement sustainable and transparent financial policy. And number 3, adopt best-in-class governance to enable high-quality services to residents.
Maybe we can stop there and delve into some of these issues in the time.
Yeah, let's go into some of these, because even in 16 months, because I'm such a hands-on guy, I really got my feet wet and really started doing a lot of work.
It's wonderful.
So.
And we want to.
So if you don't mind, I can go and share a few examples of the accomplishments even over a 16-month period.
If you want to take just a couple of minutes, because we've got a bunch of things to talk about, so just take 3 more minutes and point those out.
All right. Let me just kind of hit the highlights of the last 16 months. Okay. So on the residential character front, I championed an ordinance to require that all land use issues be reviewed by the Site and Architectural Commission prior to a city council decision. It's very important that we get the site and architecture folks, who are also 5 additional residents, to weigh in on these matters before they come to council. I championed a resolution which passed 5-0 called the Good Neighbor Site and Architecture Development Transparency Resolution to create common sense policy to increase resident notification, access, and evaluation of development proposals. I drafted some municipal code changes to close some loopholes that I saw that were being exploited, such as requiring story poles for subdivisions, requiring site and architecture reevaluation, and additional processing fees for updated applications. Recently, the City Council and the Site and Architecture Commission held a joint session. It was really a strategy planning session, and I offered a lot of constructive solutions to taking Monte Sereno's subjective design standards into the objective standard range to really thwart a legal challenge due to Housing Accountability Act. Number 1, strengthen the tree removal policy, define visual and privacy impact in terms of screen opacity, and perhaps limit grading and structure height to preserve rural character and ensure conformity to contours of land, especially on sloping lots. In fact, we have many of these policies are already restrictions in the scenic corridor. And so part of my suggestion is that we take some of the already implemented scenic corridor policies and push them into just everyday land use restrictions.
Okay.
So I can stop there, or I can continue on some of my other core objectives.
Now I want to get to your objectives. I do. I want to get a couple of things cleared up, Doug. I'm a little confused, and I know you can help me out. Are you still on the council right now?
I am not. So I was, again, I was an appointed member of the council as of May of 2019. As of September 1st, after we had kind of a negative, there's a property, or there's a subdivision proposal before the council that lost at Site and Architecture, lost at the public hearing. And so in an unprecedented way, the council reversed their decision and came back with some sort of a, coaxed up settlement agreement. And during that, I decided to resign temporarily from the council because as a recused council member, I'm not allowed to participate in that decision whatsoever. So I was really running up against sort of legal challenges, because of my recusal status. And so by resigning for this interim period before the election, I'm now allowed to fully speak my mind as a resident on this topic.
Okay.
And really full throttle oppose this settlement that is now the council has basically green-lighted for Highway 9 Scenic Corridor.
And so the council for the time being is operating with 4 people. Is that right?
Excuse me, I didn't hear you.
The council for the time being is operating with 4 members.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
But I'm glad to know that you're no longer on. I'm glad to know that you're no longer, but I'm happy to know that you're no longer a member for the next question I'm going to ask you. Not because you've left the council, but not being in the council. Okay. There was an article, and you may have seen it in today's Mercury News. The front page, I don't know if you have, but it's about a property owner, I think the last name is Reddy, as I recall, who wants to build a home on an acre of land. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about because I was heavily involved in that, and I was actually, I was a council member at the time of that decision. That came before the council twice. So once it was scheduled to come before council right before COVID, and there was a pack of information that was probably about 2 inches thick about that whole property. And so, for example, I had studied a couple of days on that program, and then the meeting got delayed due to COVID, and it got postponed. And then we had to go through again because even in that interim period, the applicant had changed the application again. And so we went and re-evaluated all that. It was a very hotly debated public hearing, lasted till, it lasted a long time. It was a lot of public testimony about that. The applicants brought forward a lot of very credible, their point of view. There was a lot of lawyers involved, of course, so everyone always threatens to sue. But yeah, I read the article in the newspaper. I think my only comment would be it's a bit of a one-sided argument in that, I can appreciate that the applicant is trying to drum up some public support for that property, but in essence, what she's trying to do there is really, a 10,000 square foot, multi-million dollar, probably even more than $10 million type property. Is it really something to feel sorry about? I don't think so. I think what's much more important is that all properties adhere to the Monte Sereno design guidelines, and I don't think that particular proposal adhered to the design guidelines. For me, we're not saying that you can't build there. We're saying you can't build what you proposed. Please come back and propose something that's reasonable.
A number of cities, and forgive me, I don't know your statutes on these things, your ordinances, but a number of cities have rules determining the size of the house based on the lot, such and such a portion.
We have the same. So
and is her house too big for the lot? Given
it's a very big house, but that's a 1 acre lot. I think the issue was not so much with density of coverage. The issue was much more with how the house was laid out on the lot and conforming to natural contours of land, and really the site, the site lines, from the streetscape view. So these are things that are protected in Monte Sereno. The objective is really to try to blend into the landscape. There's a very good example. One of the neighbors, which is the Corolla property that's just adjacent to this property. I think they spent a lot of time developing their site. If you walk by it, it really blends into the landscape. They did a really nice job on the landscaping. It really is a very nice example of what Monte Sereno development guidelines are all about. This particular project just happens to be out of phase with that. So,
you expect it to come before they threatened a lawsuit. I mean, a lot of people threaten. Oh,
it'll come back. It'll for sure come back.
It'll come back redesigned.
Yeah, so, okay. And what I'm worried about more is that, the current council makeup, the majority council is just frightened by lawsuits. They're not really willing to do the hard work and dig in and stand for principles. They really want to just roll over when people threaten lawsuits. And I'm quite sure that this will come back. Let's see if the existing votes stand and whether they'll hold to their principles.
If you win re-election, then you're going to have to deal with these council members that you consider to be not performing in a way that you would think is right. How's that going to be?
I think for various issues, we have had alliances and we have had quite heated debates on various topics. I think that's healthy. I think that's good.
But I mean, you resigned. You resigned over an issue.
Yeah, my question I was hopping mad. I was very disappointed in that decision. I wouldn't have ever done that to any of the residents in Monte Sereno personally. So those council members felt like that was the right thing to do to, basically take, there was a petition from the Site and Architecture Committee that was 114 signatures, and Site and Architecture voted 5-0 against that subdivision project. It came before council. We had a lengthy public hearing. There was over 50 residents from the neighborhood, submitted letters. There was discussion that lasted till past 2 in the morning or 1 in the morning. Sean Luthold actually kind of led the against vote for that during the public hearing, and it failed. So the project was denied 3-1, I believe the vote was, because I was recused, and then a month later, there's threats of lawsuits, and the council is now in closed session creating legal documents to now sort of thwart the will of the people and throw the residents under the bus. I actually went and got an attorney and to sort of point the right way, I spent my own money on that, and my attorney pointed out that, hey, you're not allowed to give this one developer special privilege. So for example, the council had waived all of the process permitting fees for this particular development. You shouldn't be doing that. Why does she get that beneficial treatment, not someone else? They characterized the site and architectural review as being voluntary. That's actually, it's twice in the municipal code that says that it's not mandatory, or it's not voluntary, it's mandatory. And they also waived SEQA, which is a California law, and you're not allowed to waive SEQA on a new application. And, so for some reason, the city attorney thinks that you can just sort of reuse parts from previous applications, bring them into a new application, and easy peasy, let's keep going. But that's actually not what the law says. And furthermore, even if there was a Housing Accountability Act challenge on this particular subdivision process, the council had documented objective standards that were violated. And so, I think a fresh hearing in the 6th district, so there are previous rulings that the city attorney had been pointing to that really came out of a different judicial district. I think a fresh ruling in the 6th district would be refreshing and would be positive.
I want to mine this just a little bit more in a couple of minutes, but first we want to go ahead and say hello to Sharon Childs, who is the Executive Director of the Los Gatos Community Foundation. Sharon, we want to hear a few words from you, and then we'll go right back to the rest of this interview. Sharon.
Thanks, Larry. Hi, I'm Sharon Childs, Los Gatos Community Foundation President. I'm here in Oak Meadow Park by a historic bandstand gazebo where our history started in 1991. We fund local nonprofits for projects that they do to enhance our community. We also give out community service scholarships to our seniors at our 3 local high schools. The Los Gatos Community Foundation is proud to be sponsoring this Coffee and Candidates series.
Thank you, Sharon. We're talking with Daniel Labouve, I guess we could say former member of the Monte Sereno City Council, who is running to be a member again, which leads me to ask you one more question about this, then we can move on to something else. I think voters may want to know something. You know, I don't mean for this to be painful, but if you left the council once before over an issue, what's to keep you from resigning again over another, or do you view that that was a one-of?
You know, I think that we don't know the twists and turns that come in life, right? So I never would have expected, you know, the majority ruling and two council members to flip their vote so easily. So if somebody had told me that a month ago, you know, I would have said no possible way. But yeah, here we are. And so I had put my name on the ballot back in late July, and I always do what I say. And so I don't know what the future brings, but you know, I'm a hardworking guy and I have a lot of accomplishments in only the 16 months. If you like to have, so if you agree with sort of my attitude towards city politics, which is preserve the Monte Sereno residential character, you know, that's my #1 platform, but I have others, which we can talk about later. If you think that what is happening now is okay, hey, maybe I'm not your guy. Don't vote for me. But if you don't like the fact that, hey, there's going to be a subdivision on the scenic corridor green lighted by the city council, if you think there's something wrong with that, if you don't like those types of decisions, hey, you're going to need some reliable votes that will go fight the hard fights and the hard battles and do the work and come up with reasons why those things are not justified in our town. I mean, let's please remember that Monte Sereno was established by Admiral Inglis based on rural character, right? And he fought hard not to merge with Los Gatos just for those various reasons, right? And so I think it behooves us to really go back and read the general principles and the guiding principles of Monte Sereno and what we're supposed to be fighting for.
Let's go on and talk about the next 4 years. Should you win election on November 3rd, what's the first and let's say the most important objective for you to try to see through over the next 4 years? Well,
so I do have a couple of things that I already accomplished, which with regard to kind of financial policy. And with regard to governance, I think as a guy that comes from engineering background and operations background and R&D background, I do feel like the city government really wasn't adhering to best practices. We now have some good financial policy in place. We really took a hard look at the budget and tried to really reformat it in a way that could be very easily understandable. The capital budget, the operating budget, and the reserve funds are now very separately visible with deficit surplus type totals. So that's one core element. So I think that we can very deep dive into any financial type discussion, and I will be your guy. I know almost all of those numbers by heart. Secondly, in terms of, I established a ad hoc committee for operational excellence and what I called the Customer Orientation and Operational Excellence ad hoc committee. And this just brings more business standard practice like solicitation of resident feedback through an annual review process and kind of a web-based type solicitation process, efficient processing and tracking of resident issues. You know, this is a very easy workflow to implement and put on the web. I know many residents that, hey, an issue gets submitted, even I follow up on it multiple times. they're always coming back to me through email saying, hey, what's the status of that? They don't know. Well, why not have a customer portal that just tells them what that status should be? Metrics-based evaluation. We should work hard and be tough and evaluate, and that's the way you improve, right? If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And so we should go about doing things with best-in-class business processes. Now, getting back to what I think is the most important thing for Monte Sereno, it's really this taking our design guidelines, this document, which is in the eyes of Housing Accountability Act, and morphing that into some objective standards that can use to really push back on some of the big developers that are now trying to put multi-million-dollar houses using laws that are meant for very low and moderate income families. I did bring forward some very kind of real suggestions there, but we're just moving too slow. I've told the city manager many times that, hey, in my world, I used to work in terms of achieving success in days and weeks. And when I look at city government, it pretty much tries to make strides in months and years, and it's just going way too slow. We've been talking about converting to objective standards more than 2 years since I even got interested in city government, and we have done zero. The only things that have been changed is a resolution or an ordinance that Rowena had, Ms. Turner had proposed, which basically took all scenic corridor subdivisions through the site and architecture, and then the ordinance that I passed, which took almost a year to do, to make sure that all land use issues go to site and architecture. But we have so much work to do. I have a binder full of modifications, documents, ideas that I keep pushing to the city manager. And to be honest, the resolution that I passed, the Good Neighbor resolution for, has been sitting on his desk since February. It passed 5-0, and no progress has been made since that date. The only thing that he did was schedule one joint meeting. So in my mind, the urgency needs to be ramped up, 100-fold in this regard. And it is a direct cause of why we have all of these issues with developers and lawsuits right now. So, the current council, I'm not part of the council. I'm saying the current council needs to show some leadership and step up and get this stuff done. It is job one if you want to preserve Monte Sereno.
We're almost out of time, but before we leave, I want to talk about housing in a different way. By 2023, you're going to have to find some housing for lower income people. What are your thoughts about that?
Actually, I actually was doing a little research on this because I never really bought into these RHNA codes. And so I always like to start with the premise of, hey, who's making money on this? And so if you actually look at the RHNA and the housing crisis, and actually go look at hard data, Silicon Valley has been declining in terms of population since 2015. And the growth rate has slowed from about 1.2% in the last 3 years to about 0.25% in 2019. The adjusted median, inflation-adjusted median sales price has declined about 6%. But to contrast that, an extraordinary amount of commercial space has come available. So 8.5 million square feet, more than any year since 2001 has been completed in 2019. And so for me, okay, there's this RHNA code, but the targets for RHNA are assuming that the populations are going to double and triple in very short order. Those are not the actual population growth rates. And so you have to ask yourself, what's going on here? Who's pushing this stuff? And is it high tech? And is it the developers in the pockets of, the folks of like Scott Wiener? So I'll give you an example. I used to fly a lot. I used to get this on Dutch airplanes. This is the legislature's view of what should be every single family home in California. This is not my view of what should be in California for a single family lot or any place in Monte Sereno. This doesn't belong. But this is what the legislature is trying to do. Now, the legislature is a big machine, and the pendulum swings back and forth very slowly. But there is a huge narrative about housing crisis that is producing all of these very, aggressive laws that are basically taking away local control. And so if you want a council member that is willing to actually dig in and push back at the lower levels against these laws until they actually are rectified and changed at the state level, I'm that guy. And I think that Councilmember Turner is also that person. I'm very suspect of the other folks on the council. They seem to be very pro-development at the moment, or at least gun shy of any sort of legal lawsuit. So, you know, if this is what you want for Monte Sereno, I'm not your guy. I want to keep the rural character of Monte Sereno.
Okay, well, we've had an opportunity for you to share that with all the people out there who will be watching this, either online or on TV, and we want to thank you for your participation today. We want to thank you for watching. We look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, be safe.